We'll call the meeting to order. If you would like to make some type of presentation to the Planning Commission, I'd like to ask you to fill out a blue card and give it to the secretary so that we can keep a record. And then if there's anyone here that wants to bring up something that's not on the agenda to talk to the commission about, you can do so, but we will not take action on it at all. Any questions? Roll call.
Commissioner Arachi?
Here.
Commissioner Helen? Commissioner Sheard?
Here.
Commissioner Jensen?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jenkins?
Here.
Chairperson Durling?
Here. Okay, we open the session. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. First item is the consent calendar. The only thing on it is the approval of the minutes. I can take a motion in a second.
Motion we approve the minutes?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for March 24th.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Chairperson Durling, we overlooked the public communication portion. So if there's any public speakers on non-agenda items,
So do we have some public communication?
clerk, do we have any? Okay,
No.
We don't?
we have no public communication. I just wanted to confirm that we had
Then I didn't
none.
overlook it.
Just confirming.
Thanks. We'll go on to public hearings. The first public hearing is item 2, ozone entertainment use permit. Staff have a report on that?
Yes. So this is for a use permit for Ozone Entertainment at 1726 Montgomery Street. Proposed uses are hatchet throwing, Segway and bicycle rentals, and alcohol sales, no hard alcohol. So this project is an indoor entertainment facility, and this is for community members to meet in a drug-free environment for outside of the heat and to recreate with alcohol as a portion of the proposed uses. Since the creation of the staff report, we have in blue created 2 additional conditions of approval. This is to prevent the first is to prevent the proposed use from becoming solely alcohol sales and to become just solely a bar, because the primary intention of this project is for indoor entertainment. So in the page in blue in front of you, this will be condition number 3. Alcohol sales are planned at this location, but would not be allowed if no other of the indoor entertainment uses were occurring. There's also Segway and bicycle rentals planned. If you could bring up the map of the exploration area for the Segways.
Okay.
One of the other the other condition for this project is that we considered as staff and management were to prevent the segways and bicycles from being left unattended on the street. And for safety concerns, the condition here is to have the segways and bicycles be as part of a tour. Okay, and if you can go to the project site plan. So no exterior facade changes or signage has been proposed, but there have been interior improvements that we will bring up.
The floor plan?
Yes. You'll see the axe throwing lanes there. And the applicants are here today if they wish to go over anything that I haven't covered. That would be an okay time to do so.
These are both I'm the landlord, of course. We were here last week for the facade, or 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. And for the approval of the look of the front of the building, and of course, the side of the building, which is the entrance to their facility.
Is that microphone on?
Yes, it's on.
Just be closer, yeah.
Got a bad cold, I'm not trying not to get close to them. So, my question was, Daniel, that's the first I've heard of Segways only being available on a tour, would be not a rental. I'm quite unclear why that would be, that somebody'd have to be with them for that.
So this is a proposed condition that we've created since the creation of the staff report. There's part of the municipal code, 12.04.020 is to prevent obstructions on the street. So without supervision or a protocol in place to return the segways and the bicycles, staff's felt that there's too much potential for them to be left out in the street.
Well, cost and GPS is what would save that. They're not gonna leave their product sitting on the sidewalks because of cost and insurance.
Right.
So they would not be left anywhere. They'd be on them in 20 minutes if they're not active. That's a normal protocol.
The staff and the planning commission can certainly weigh in. The staff discussed it, several of us, and we understand that most Segway rentals are done as part of group tours that are led, and, in groups. And my wife and I both have done this a couple times, and it's always been in groups. The Segway itself is a vehicle that can move around pretty fast, and there might be safety concerns and that sort of thing. So that's why we added that proposed condition.
Right, I think we'd like to we're not initially doing those, but we'd like to come back with a program that would work then, because it's not feasible to somebody to rent a scooter or something just to once to ride the top of the river and walk to have a tour. And that would definitely impact business. But I think we can come back with something, say, hey, we have a 2-hour window or an hour window to get anything picked up that's stopped or it's not working. But we could come back with a plan for that, for a retrieval plan or something that would be acceptable to the commission.
So you used the word scooter. That's a different thing than a Segway. Is this scooters or Segways or potentially both? Or
It would be potentially
Potentially
both, right. But their insurance and all those require them to be GPS marked, to be tagged, and know where all your product is at all times.
So I think that we can amend this condition to a plan would be provided, or a retrieval plan would be provided prior to this, the Segways or the scooters being implemented.
They're not currently planned on opening, in the next 30 days or 90 days. We're looking at, obviously building the base of the business. I'm just speaking for them based off our conversations, so please chime in. But, in terms of it has to be a financially feasible program, as not to bring another staff person on to take somebody on a tour.
Right.
And to keep the Segway prices at a reasonable rate that people would actually use them. So, okay, in terms of the alcohol, that's a very minor part of the business. This is actually more of a kid-oriented and family-oriented program. Alcohol is not meant to be a revenue, and I would expect less than 10% or less than that. That would be, and it's not anything on tap. It's only a bottle beer, and it's already part of their insurance policies that have already been submitted to the planning department. That already covers everything there. So there's they put a lot of conditions also.
So we basically, just to introduce myself, I'm Sylvia Sweat, and this is Caitlin Medeiros, and we're trying to just bring some family entertainment to Oroville. We love our beautiful town. We have a beautiful river, and we have all sorts of outdoor recreation beyond, as far as we can imagine. But we don't have anything where families can go on a Sunday afternoon, whether it be after church or on a Friday evening. And what we were thinking with the Segways is you can come, we have a tutorial, we have a safety protocol in place. We have safety gear that would come along with it. We wouldn't just be sending you on your way. You'd have an intro, a tutorial, and at which time, if you felt comfortable, then going on and, taking a map, and you could go off with your family and have a little adventure. And maybe not everybody chooses to ride a Segway. Maybe the kids ride a scooter and only mom and dad ride a Segway. I mean, we wanted to give some options, but we definitely also, we're gonna start with a small quantity base. It's not something that we're gonna get 100 of these Segways and they're gonna end up all over town. Just a handful of them, enough for different size families to be able to enjoy time together. And then as far as inside Ozone, we wanted to, we have 8 lanes of axe throwing, and we just want a place we have some free games, shuffleboard, air hockey, pool tables, claw machines, something where families can go make memories and just have a nice time together.
I think, do you want to let them know? They have sensory rooms.
Oh, yes.
Virtual reality rooms.
I'm sorry, that was one of the main things. My son has Down syndrome, and so I've always veered from going public places because I never know how my son's going to behave or how well it's going to be received. So we also want to be sensitive to that and be accepting of families with kids and adults of all abilities. Our safety zones around the axe throwing facilities are wheelchair accessible, so as long as they can throw a 2-pound axe, then they are able to do it too. So there's all kinds of different things for families to do. Oh yeah, and then we have virtual reality escape rooms, and then the sensory room. It really is a place where if somebody were to have get overstimulated, where they could go in and calm down. And there's cool lights and touch tiles on the walls, and various different activities. And not everything costs money inside there either. There's tons of free things for families to do, in addition to the experiences that they will purchase.
So I think just in general, why I'm here is because of supporting, we need stuff like this in Oroville. We need something, where do you go, casino? I mean, that's it. I mean, that's the only place you can go. We need stuff to start coming here, and we hope that it's successful. I mean, they want to do more, but we got to prove a proving ground and get something successful. Someplace people are going to be able to take their kids to. We can't just go to casino or we go to Chico or we got to go to Yuba City or somewhere else. There's nothing here.
I think that's worth
Go ahead.
noting also, is that we're not just promoting like you to come and drop off your kids and you leave. To be in the building as a minor, you must be accompanied by a parent or guardian. So it's not just a group of 15-year-olds can come in and hang out and do what they want. They must have their parent or guardian with them in the building.
We want families to feel safe, and we're just 2 local families trying to be the change that we want to see in our community. And we've always wanted family entertainment, so we decided we're going to.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So there they put their feet out there. So there we go.
Okay, so the staff recommendation then, that you have on the blue paper, staff is okay modifying that but before they start Segway rentals, to sit down with staff and review their plan and safety plan and retrieval plan. So that would be our proposal. We'll throw it to the planning commission then.
Okay.
Any questions, commissioners?
I'm going to sound awful stupid here, but with my age, I can get away with it. Would you explain what a Segway is?
Yes, a Segway actually is a personal
A vehicle?
motorized device.
It is a vehicle of some
It-
kind?
It is. The ones that we would be getting would be the most modern. They're called 9bots. They're self-balancing. There's still a tutorial on them. And yes, there is a little bit of ability. So some people probably won't feel comfortable on them. But that's part of the whole safety protocol that we go through. And there, you could have young teenagers all the way up to older adults. Like Wes said, he has ridden Segways with his wife. So they really, we're trying to bring.
83-year-old can ride it?
Once.
Once?
Mr. Chairman, it's a two-wheeled device that you use your balance in order to make it go forwards and
So
backwards.
it's just one person? then?
Looks like an
Yes.
emu.
Per.
Individual.
Thanks.
And we're only literally talking about 6 to start, 5 or 6 to start, just to get our feet wet and see how
See how the community enjoys it or
Yeah,
not.
I think in terms of their West, if we're gonna do that, we should really look at, because they gotta look at the economic feasibility of whether it's a bike or a Segway. They're both gonna be electric vehicles. A bike may be more user-friendly, but something that they can utilize all these walking
Wonderful,
trails we have. We have
yes.
miles and miles of these trails that nobody can, get to walk them, but a lot of people would prefer to ride them.
How fast do they go?
About 50.
They go up
Stop
to,
it.
they can go up to, I believe it's
believe
8
it's
miles an hour,
No,
12 miles.
I'd have to Google it.
You can
but-
govern them to whatever speed you
I
want.
don't have
They're
it off the
electric,
top
so
of
you
my
can
head,
run
I
them in different-
apologize.
You can actually run them in different modes.
Yeah.
So you can limit how fast they're gonna run.
Well, there's certain places, I mean,
Well, you have
if you have
control.
joggers competing with Segways, you have a problem if you got Segways that are going around a bend at 20 miles an hour and the joggers.
Oh, no, yeah,
Agreed,
understood.
yes.
Yeah,
There would definitely be some safety protocols, and we would have to have a safety, make sure that they could, whether it be with cones or something right there where they can prove, prove that they can maneuver the device when they ride it.
So I think you're breaking, I would say not breaking new ground because it's done, obviously, but it's something we need to get Segways here, test them, make sure they're good. And out there, maybe we bring the commission across the street, you guys jump on them and see what happens.
See what you think.
Okay, but I mean, this is something that we have to evolve into and make something that's gonna work. It's done everywhere, not, in a lot of places.
There's
But
actually a place in Huntington Beach that you spoke to.
Huntington Beach, and also we'd be partnering with the Segway of LA, and they've been doing this for 15 years. They have the top of the line, state of the art, all their safety equipment comes there, all the 9bots would come from there. And we would have the proper insurance for it, we've already have the estimate, everything's ready to go, we're just waiting to see how things get going. It really is a lot safer than one would think.
The lady
It's
in
not
Huntington
like
Beach, what did she
those
say about it? She
hoverboards.
said she'd been in business for how long and never, because we were concerned about theft.
Yeah,
And
people
so
trying
we
to,
actually spoke to a lady who owns the facility in Huntington Beach, and she said in 10 years, she's never had a single theft, and knock on wood, no accidents.
yes.
that's amazing.
That's what I said,
Okay.
but that's what she
So
said.
I
so-
think
is on a
I think the
beach,
answer
on a
there
beach.
is, it is new ground, so I think if we defer that and then come back with a plan that says these are actually maybe at that point, have a unit here, get one of the units up, test them, ride them, make sure that, ultimately you guys are responsible for them, so we need to make sure
We
that's.
also wanted to bring something that
Sure.
that isn't even in our close surrounding areas. The closest area where we could find Segway rentals is the Bay Area. So we don't wanna just bring something that Chico has, or we don't wanna bring something, we wanna bring something that's completely from out of the area, cause who knows, maybe people from Chico will come to Oroville now to hang out, or do stuff over here, so. We were just tired of having to go to Chico to do everything, so we wanna have something here in our town, so that we can enjoy time together.
I assume they're battery operated, so how far can you go distance-wise or time-wise?
I know, I should have brought our manual. It has all the information in there.
They'll last a couple of hours without
Huh?
without
Danny
recharging
might have it.
easily. Yeah.
Several hours, and you can adjust the speed. They are self-balancing, so although you do propel them by balancing and leaning forward, they're self-balancing whenever you stand there, so you don't have to, it's not like a skateboard, how you have to be,
Not like a unicycle back in the day, yeah, so.
Yeah.
So they do stand straight up with you on them. But I think that's something we should come back with a plan, because I think
Yeah.
all of us don't really have all the answers for that.
Exactly.
It's
I
more-
think
yeah.
ultimately in the future, we would love to have mountain bikes as well, that, or not mountain bikes, but the
Electric
electric
bikes.
bikes as well for along the river. Ironically enough, it's the same insurance, but you have to decide one or the other whenever you apply for the
Yeah.
insurance. So we went with Segways first, because
And what's the speed limit, top speed of these things?
Well, that actually is gonna be, I think, Wes, you
Yeah.
can probably answer that, but you're actually a function of, you set the speed limit on the unit.
There's different governors.
It's software that you'll actually be able to set your speed limit on the units.
Now, in my understanding, getting the vibes from you that you're thinking maybe continuing this meeting,
Well, we like,
coming back.
specifically just for the rentals of the Segways, not on anything else, no, sir.
What was that?
Just on the rental of the Segway, the rentals of the Segway units.
So we made this use permit an all-inclusive use permit so that because they're going to be phasing in components of this business. And so they don't have to come back for another bite at the apple every time they bring in a new component. It's an all-inclusive use permit, so when they're ready to phase in the Segways, they'll be ready to go. But they will have to consult with staff as to what that plan will be prior to implementing that phase with the Segways.
We didn't wanna
Same
come
with
back
the
and,
alcohol.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go,
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank
sir.
you, I just didn't want
They
to.
wanna come back and pay another use application permit, and go through the whole
No,
process.
no,
yeah.
that's what I was trying to get away from.
So,
Yeah, somebody kindly just helped us out, and it shows that the maximum speed on the economic mode is 6 miles per hour. So,
It says there's
Twice the walking
Yeah.
speed then.
4 models.
That's not too bad.
yeah. 6 miles per hour up to 15 miles per hour. And we could even discuss, we would provide all the safety equipment that would go along with that rental. And then we could even consider making it a smaller map. Maybe there's a smaller area that you guys want them contained if you're worried about downtown, going in towards like DMV and towards Oro Dam. Keeping it more along the river or something like that, we are totally happy to do that. But like I say, we don't have Segway rentals right now. It's something that we want to bring to our town, but we'd like to just get Ozone brick and mortar open.
With what we have right
Yeah.
now, which is the virtual reality escape rooms and axe throwing, and
then just to mention too, is the alcohol
Thank you so
component, doesn't even come into play for months.
What was that?
The alcohol component, to be able to sell a bottle of beer, it doesn't
Yeah.
come in, because no liquor license exists. Once this meeting says, okay, you can have it, then we have to apply. And it'll take, the liquor board, months to do something. So it's not something that's gonna be there when they open. Wish it was, but you still have to have the city's approval first that you can even apply for it.
As Don mentioned, this is all-inclusive, so in the event that they do apply for a beer and wine sale license or bottled beer only, we are asking for pre-approval to issue a letter of public convenience or necessity at such time as they do apply, and then staff can
That's
just
fine.
sign the letter.
It's not, just want to be clear, it's not there when they open. They can't, they don't have a
Yeah.
license until this meeting says, okay, go ahead and open. They don't even have, they don't have the ability to apply for a
Exactly.
license. Yeah.
but once we get approved, we are hand delivering that bad boy.
I've been doing all the
Yes,
questions. I've
commissioners.
I never can pronounce the name. Iris?
Rossi.
Huh?
Arashi.
Yeah. Oh, it's Italian, isn't it?
It is.
I should
It's
get
Italian.
that. Arasi, yeah. Go ahead.
So this is sort of like the Hatchet House. Is that the name of the Hatchet House in Chico?
That is a place that it is similar to, but we've incorporated some, like the sensory room for special needs. We've added virtual reality escape rooms. We have a different kind of setup in there. Like I say, you have claw machines, air hockey, pool table.
See slot machines?
No,
Yes.
Claw machines, I'm so sorry. Claw machines, like where you can get a
No.
prize out where children
Yeah.
put quarters in.
okay.
You did say slot.
Did I?
No, we want slots.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm like, wow, I did.
Profits.
Claw machines, and we have like the coin operated little tattoo machines for the kids, and the bouncy balls and that sort of thing.
It's really family oriented.
No, I've been to the Hatchet House. I think it's great. I think it's a good thing. And with the Segway thing, I mean, I think that's good also. I mean, I'm not so sure a guided tour would work. I mean,
Our goal, if you notice on our map, we included all of the local areas downtown. We have the Chinese Museum listed on there. We have the Old Tool Museum. We have the things that our downtown has, but nobody really goes to. We're trying to promote more of people going to these places and checking them out.
Exactly.
So that's why we included, the local eateries and the coffee shops and all on the map, as well as the fish hatchery.
Yeah, I mean, these are basically made for, it's for entertainment. It's not for just going from point A to point B.
Exactly.
I mean, I was in Reno
Enjoying
a
yourself.
few weeks ago when you could see
go get a-
people would leave scooters on the side of the road or sidewalk,
Exactly.
and then they just leave them.
Yes,
And
this is
that's
going
what
on a
that's what
little
they don't
adventure.
want, I'm assuming, is
No,
why
they would
they're,
have a
Exactly.
several hour increment, whatever hour they rented in, 2, 4, whatever it is, and then they would go and do their thing and bring it back to us.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know, I think there's a good thing. I think you need it. I mean, the only thing I would caution is I wouldn't let someone come in there and have 9 beers and then jump on the Segway.
No.
No.
I would
That's literally
I
within
would
within our guide. Yeah.
figure
And
that out.
We also have that in with our insurance and waivers that say that intoxication will not be tolerated. And absolutely, you won't be able to allow to ride a Segway if you've had any alcohol, because it is actually a motorized vehicle and you could get a DUI. So,
And even with the axe throwing, we have it in there that once we
Yeah.
get our beer license, you're only allowed X amount of drinks per your
time frame that you're there.
Time
So what we are not trying to have any kind of bar kind of feel establishment. We're trying to promote family entertainment, and if you want to have a beer where you're throwing some axes, okay.
Yeah, no, again, I was at the Hatchet House, and there was families in there, and they were playing cornhole, and they were playing foosball and
Exactly.
throwing.
And it was a nice, cool
Ac-
vibe, right? On a
No,
Sunday
it was great.
afternoon, or-
No, it was
Yeah.
good. So that's all I have.
Jensen?
Hi, my questions are probably more for staff. Now, I'm trying to clarify it sounds like you have some sort of verbal amendment to the conditional use permit, right? That like, taking off, I'm just looking at item 4 on the use permit, the second sentence, the Segway rentals occur in conjunction with guided tours. Are you just striking that sentence and the rest is good, or what are you proposing to?
I don't have the amendment in front of me, I apologize.
This one? I think we're just talking about deferring the Segway stuff to a
Yeah.
later point, to condition.
Just want to be
So
clear about.
we
I just wanna
would
be clear
strike,
about what
we
we're
would
asking
strike
here.
the second sentence and add something that staff would review the protocol before they actually implement the Segway rentals.
So at the end of alcohol sales, we would just delete the rest of that and say we'll come back, defer that till a later point when we have actually a plan, a more thought-out plan there?
Yeah, we're leaving it in, but the language says exactly that.
Okay, that's what we're looking for.
Thank you.
All right, and then I know absolutely nothing about hatchet throwing, and of course, when I'm reading the agenda and I'm seeing this in alcohol sales, and of course, all kinds of grisly things go through my mind, and I just want to make sure, I believe in doing what you want to do, and I just want to make sure that if anything goes wrong, we're not going to be liable in the city if anything.
Right. It falls under their insurance.
I would say that the coaching and safety manuals for both the hatchet throwing and the segways were comprehensive, and no immediate safety concerns came to mind when I went through them. But the added condition for the segway and bicycle rentals, definitely a return protocol to avoid having them left out is what's going to remain, and we'll work towards.
So you just want something in writing on the duration of what they
I think
rent for?
how you
Yes.
retrieve them, how they're not, I mean, because
Okay.
actually, we're in Reno for this weekend, they have the same type of deal where they just leave them.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
And so you gotta, yeah, but they'll pick them up, they have trucks roving around all the time, but that's a big volume
Exactly.
use.
We're gonna have a small volume.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. They'll have something.
And I think
for
the
down-
axes, if you haven't, I've never thrown an axe until probably a couple weeks ago when they were gone, but, it's actually software driven. It's actually, putting different games on the walls, all that type. It's not like just throwing axes at a wall, blank wall, and just keep on going.
Exactly.
It's a lot of software as the virtual reality, so.
Daughter who I'm sure is would be interested. She's kind of crazy, so.
Oh, crazy's good.
She sounds fun.
Okay.
So they're not actual.
No, they're hatchets,
They are.
but you're not just, you throw it to a wooden wall, but on the game is projected different games, tic-tac-toe, picture of your mother-in-law, do whatever you want to throw an axe at. You can do all these different things, okay?
So hypothetically, just like you throw darts at a wall at a target, you're gonna throw axes at a wall, at a target that we've built, and we have 4 projected targets, so you can throw axes at ducks, or you can throw axes at zombies, or whatever you decide to do in your party. And then we have 4 standard targets that have the bullseye lanes, and we have several games that you can play and chalkboards to keep score with your party.
You're
And
keeping score just like you're bowling.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
basically where you hit and it keeps up there and puts your score for you.
Oh, wow.
Carl will be there.
Okay,
Oh,
here we go.
Sport.
Yes,
Yes, there's different.
there's World Axe Throwing League. Yep.
Turn on it. If you notice that it's off.
Competition access, is that what you're going to have?
Yes.
Are you gonna, so if I went there and, as I probably will, I loved, for reasons, I love throwing
Okay,
and I was very good at it.
wonderful.
And, but I'd only want, international standard axe.
Okay.
Is that what you're going to have?
Well, we would definitely have a couple of different models, and we can absolutely have some. We have World Axe Throwing League approved throwing axes, so they actually are specific to throwing at targets. So
There's
I think there
parameters.
would be, I think those would qualify as what you're
Well,
asking. Yeah,
The standard, the national standard, international standard is very strict
yes,
in, size, weight,
yeah,
length,
exactly.
and so
Length and
forth.
weight
Yeah.
and, yep. Yes, yes, sir, we will have those.
Cool. Well, you're gonna see me then.
Right on. I can't wait.
Commissioner Sheard?
I absolutely love this. I have not heard one thing that I do not like about it. What else I think is so brilliant, not only are you making this great place for kids to go, but you're getting people out on these bikes and these going into town. I think this is exactly what we need. And I have 11 grandchildren and I had 4 visiting. And I was kind of bummed they had to go to Chico to go on the trampolines and go to the Children's Museum. And so I am just thrilled, absolutely thrilled. And I love that you're going to have beer. I think the whole thing is just I think you will do well.
Thank you so much.
So thank you.
That's what we want is your guys' support, community support.
Any other commissioners with questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you, Commissioners.
I'll close the hearing that I didn't open.
Do we have any comments on this item?
Should have hit it twice.
Sure you say that.
They were too fast for me. Okay, any discussion amongst staff members, for a motion and
That's right.
a second?
Motion to approve item 2 as presented with the additional conditions and the edit to the additional item 4.
Have a motion, have a second?
I will second.
Here we have a motion and a second.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Did you ever say what day you hope to open full?
We
I wanna
have
get down.
the,
I'm ready to throw axe.
we have the the approval letter drafted, and we will modify those conditions in the approval letter, and we will sign it tomorrow so they can open whenever they desire.
Because I'm gonna see if I can get, competitive axe throwing teams going. I don't know if you've ever done it before, but it is a very precise, technical, arm jerking sport that I loved it. Did it for a year and a half in El Paso.
Whoops.
So, thank you. Okay. Go on to item 3. Open the hearing on the general plan amendment and rezone. Staff?
Okay, item 3 is for a general plan amendment and rezone of 21 parcels including the building of Ozone Entertainment and parcels in the same building of the Ford dealership and some parcels up on the levee. We could bring up the map with the affected parcels. The current zoning is PQ, public, quasi-public. That zone, they were zoned this way because planned was a public plaza, which will no longer be moving forward. Several of these lots have sat vacant. We're planning to rezone by city initiation, rezone to downtown mixed use, which is more consistent with the surrounding land uses and will bring potential commercial activity back to this area. Mark Mendez, who is here today, intends on developing several of these parcels and has a vision for office and retail, I believe restaurant as well, or food retail in this area. Yes, the Ford dealership, the building on the right there, and then the buildings highlighted in red, which are up to the levee.
All the stuff that's on the top that he's talking about that addresses the levee up there, I think we have.
Yes.
How many parcels is that, Wes? 13 or something like that?
I think there's 12 in that zone.
So there's some challenges for that in the fact that there are some parcels that are only 7 feet wide.
Yeah, that's what's going to be my number one question.
Okay, well, those are owned by people that bought them at tax lien auctions. So we're gonna have to go to them and either eminent domain them, give them access to them, turn them into planter boxes. It's kind of a challenge that we're gonna face because they're not developable lots. But a lot of times people buy them for $30 and they'll buy them because nobody wants them, and then they'll just hope that somebody has to come negotiate with them at one point. So we're rolling the bones, I guess you wanna call it, and we bought everything else around them, so they're landlocked. We're in escrow on all other lots, with the exception, I think, of 2 lots, or Don, is that 3 lots that the city owns?
That's correct.
That they're looking for the city to work a program with us to get them onto tax rolls and combine this thing, and quite possibly at one point close that street if we can make this whole thing come together. So we're looking at, for different plans to see how this thing could all work together, but we have to get the puzzles first, get the parts to the puzzle. So we're in escrow on the corner lot there. Those lots across the street from there, so right there, there's 3 parcels right there that we've been in escrow. We're just waiting for them to, they have a title issue they're fixing right now. But that completes the corner for the Ford garage. And we already have plans that we have drawn for new buildings, everything going there. We're ready to break ground if they would close. Across the street, those titles have got more problems than you can imagine. So actually, Mid-Valley Angie, they're working on figuring out who's what, but they got a lot of issues. So they're working on those. Thank goodness, one party owns all of them except for the city, and then the 2 or 3 there is 7-footers. So those are all in escrow and going through right now. So it's a process, but we'll be done with the one that Larry Tracy owns, the corner lots there. We expect to be done with that probably within the next week. But that's what's going on. That's why that was originally where all that blue, I think it was the fountains, right?
It was the fountains. It was meant to be a plaza.
Mm-hmm. That was all City Hall and fountains.
Yeah. It was a part of the Arts, Cultural, and Entertainment District study that was completed back in 2015, I believe.
Okay.
And I think 13, 14, and then they were rezoned in 2015. But that project never came to fruition. There was a lot of components within that for the historic downtown area that were not well received. So council decided against moving forward with the components of that plan. So that's why staff initiated the rezone of these parcels to make it more in line with what currently exists in our downtown area.
I went back to when we purchased that property from the Goodhue family. that owned that, I went back to Chris and I said, Chris, how did you sell me a property? It was a Ford dealership that was zoned a park. Because when we went to get our financing, he said, we can't help you. This is a park. It's not zoned for what it's being used for. That's when I found out Wes gave me a color drawing of everything that's there, and it's unbeknownst to anybody. So here we are. That's why we requested, came to Don and to Bill LaGrone at the time, and requested to get the zone to something that could actually be developed. So that's how we got to today.
After sending notice to property owners, we did receive one phone call from a property owner, Larry Tracy, who did not object to the rezone.
Did not?
Did not object to the rezone.
That's because he got our money already.
Any questions from the commissioners?
No. Anything else? I just wanted to kind of clarify what was what.
Wait, I just want to make sure any of the commissioners have a question of you. Seeing none, okay.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Jensen, did you have something to say?
Yeah, well, I did have a question for the gentleman. I was just, so the rezone is initiated by staff, you said, right?
That is
Correct.
correct.
So is there a reason why the rezone didn't include the little church property, it's going to be an island if we do a rezone here, or?
Because churches are typically public quasi. Every church within the city limits of Oroville is zoned as public quasi.
Okay, it's the same permission in an MXD zone as it is in a PQ, right? At least it was when I looked it up.
It is, but we wanted to remain consistent with all the other churches in the community.
As a general practice, we want to keep churches in the PQ
Yes.
and, okay.
Correct.
All right.
However, when Danny talked to Mr. Tracy, he did inquire as to why that parcel was not also included in the rezone. And he indicated that it had been a restaurant in the past. So it is our convention to have churches in PQ zones, but as you've stated, it's not mandatory.
If the commission would like to include that.
Is it
is.
make it any more complicated for anybody to have it the way that it's proposed here versus rezoning the whole, or including it in the rezone, or?
It would only be complicated in the future going forward if it ceases to be a church. And then it would just be a standalone PQ property. If it would be changed to a mixed use, a downtown mixed use, then it would be existing non-conforming going forward. But should it cease to be a church, then it could easily transition into a mixed use development.
Would it be non-conforming in MXD? Because the way I looked it up, it would look like it was a permitted use.
Off the top of
Yeah,
my head,
wrong, but-
I'm not sure.
Okay.
We'll have to look that up.
Which is why I was wondering why it wasn't just included, so.
I will look it up on my handy dandy device.
Other than a church, what other uses would be
Museums.
appropriate there concerning what uses are in the area? Is it commercial or office or what? And didn't you say that the church was a restaurant at one time?
Yeah, the church does own that entire parking lot, so there is a big pad there all the way out to Montgomery.
Oh, okay.
So they did purchase that pad, so that just so you're clear, if somebody went in there, they could have that whole.
Oh, okay.
And the parking lot is C2,
Yes.
which as I understand would be appropriate, because more appropriate having the parking lot as C2 than in the MXD, right? I did some reading this week, catching up.
Any other questions of staff for the applicants? We'll close the hearing. Any discussion amongst the commissioners?
I think it would be great to make that mixed use also, if it doesn't hurt the church in any way. Because it does seem silly to me to just have that one parcel.
Yeah, I believe it's being used kind of like a fellowship hall.
It's a church. I mean, they have
Yeah.
Sunday morning service.
Well,
and-
they do have service there, okay.
They do.
Now, this was initiated by staff, right? By the city?
Correct.
And so, if you make a change, you'll have to notice and everything else.
If it is the pleasure of the planning commission, this does have to go to the city council for approval. We can amend the proposal in accordance with the planning commission's desires and take it to city council. We do have to reissue public notice
That's
as
what I'm
well
talking about.
anyway. We have to do that anyway, so
Yeah.
we can include that parcel in that public notice
Doesn't have to
process.
come back to us.
No, not unless you want to look at it again.
Okay, I just wanted the commissioners to understand the choices there.
Of course, yes,
Say yay or nay?
yes.
Okay.
Okay,
I mean, I'd say it just looks nicer if there are nice, large, consistently equally zoned areas as opposed to parcel by parcel piecemeal. Like, I noticed there are a couple of R4s nearby and areas that were not developed. I have no idea what the history of those are, but might want to address those at some point and rezoning those to something
Well,
more
you just don't want
appropriate.
spot
But
zoning.
yeah, yeah.
That was a hodgepodge. If you look at the Ford dealership, where all those trucks are stored in the back, those all used to be houses. So, that thing was, the Ford dealership was on like 13 lots.
Yeah, before the Ford dealership, that was single-family housing, yes, back in the 1910s or, yeah.
any other questions?
What is the ultimate plan for that back 21 parcels there? If you get all the little slivers?
Honestly, I don't really know yet. I know that we want to be able to, depending on what the uses are going to be and what the economics of the city, or not city, but the economy is doing.
Yeah.
We don't want warehousing, we want retail, maybe something that's going to be accessible to the river, whether it'll be any type of market rate housing, or it'd be something that we would add on to the Ford garage. We looked at also I believe that is Broderick, right? The street that runs in between there. Ideally, if we can get the components of all the non-conforming lots and put them together, one thought was to close Broderick and quite possibly put a downtown farmer's market area that would go in there because it's very large, and have some type of stage system, summer nights, something like that, that's not going to be impacting the parking on the, to the other people down the street. But we need to we're looking at what's economically feasible. Right now, we currently have about, in speaking with, I think, Bill and Don, who's walked it, the back sidewalks are gone. Probably need $150,000 of sidewalk work. Probably be cheaper to close the street and combine everything together and make some type of facility back there, rather than just spend money on the sidewalks that are got trees that are big, beautiful trees, but they're killing the sidewalks. So we could get rid of that. So we're kind of, honestly, it's just we're going to do our economic feasibility, what makes economic sense, and what would be a good thing and where we think we get users to come use it. So we got to make sense of it. But we'd like to maybe at one point develop that all into one big, I'd say unit or complex, or however you want to call it. We have quite a few new users that are going to come into the Ford garage areas in the front of the street that you guys saw the different designs. We're working with Fidelity Title right now, another mortgage company. So for professional office space that we want in the fronts of the building, that we want to bring that more on this end, and then to the back, we'd like to bring more entertainment stuff that would be complementary to the Ozone. They would like to expand some of their stuff also. We just want to make sure that they get a good start and get some good positive feedback. So there's a lot of options there. We're not utilizing the river, and we got a beautiful park right above that.
Yeah.
So we got to get access, and how do we build access up to that? So there's a lot of options there, but once we get everything components together, there is another component that will come before you, and that's where we're asking the city to contribute the pieces of parcels that are intermixed in here. Some of them go to the middle of the river. It does. It's the way it is. So we got to get them all together and put the pieces together, and then at that point, we'll make a decision and come back with a proposal saying this is what we need, this is what we want to do. Yeah, you can see that one up there. It goes out in the middle of the river. So.
I think it might be great axe throwing sites.
Yeah. Well, we have, as you know, we're going to do the gateway, and at the same time there, we have K1 cart people that are interested, that are electric carts, that are indoor, and these things are very fast, but they'll be inside on a track, not running the streets. But you're typically those guys are going to come in and the carts are $50,000 a piece. But this is the kind of the use. We have bowling alleys that are interested. So right now we've actually hired a consultant firm and a marketing firm for the Gateway project already to turn around, and we're going to vet all these different users and do the economic studies and what's going to take to make it happen. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So we did hire that same company that brought the Walmart in, that did the Ross and the Harbor Freight and that complex, and moved the Walmart over. Basically, is we need users from outside this area, and we need guys that have experience and ties on larger users, not our local. We're going to get some local users, but the majority of the ones that are going to pay the money that need to make that product successful is going to be from out of the area. So that's what we're going on. And we'll come back to you with different proposals on that, what's going to happen there, because there's a lot moving there. So that's good. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm ready for a motion in a second if there's no further discussion.
Do we motion to include that other lot?
If that's the desire of the commission, yes.
Yes.
So I would make a motion that we rezone this area and include that additional lot. And I probably didn't say
If we-
that correctly.
If we could go forward that way without delaying the process in any
Right.
way, I think is what I'm,
We'll double check with our city attorney, but I
Yeah.
believe we can move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
to me, it makes more sense and from a planning standpoint to have everything together like we're proposing. So you have motioned to approve and including the lot that's,
Yeah, do we have to identify that lot?
We will identify it by 8
you know what
p.m.
we're talking about. So I will second then.
Here a second?
Yes.
Okay,
You did.
we have a motion and a second.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and thank you. And one question I forgot to ask, which is kind of dumb. What is, on the axe throwing, what is the distances that you have?
Stop 'em.
Are they competitive distances?
We have a 12-feet throw line and 15-foot throw line.
Okay, right on. Right on. You don't have the 20-foot one, but that's okay. No, I'm going to be there. I got to start getting my arm exercise. Okay. Next item is item 4, housing element update. I think staff.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. This is going to be a
Huge.
in-depth item for this 289-page document. We have about 23 minutes worth of presentations to provide you, which is background and what's in this document and what it all means. This is a required element of the Oroville General Plan. It must be updated every 8 years.
8 or 4?
8 years.
Okay.
Couple of reasons why we even have the housing element. For every jurisdiction, state law requires that the jurisdiction analyze the economic circumstances and housing needs of the jurisdiction's population to appropriately plan for adequate housing in all the economic sectors, to enact policies that accommodate private sector investment in housing, because that's where where housing comes from, and to create programs to support housing development and maintenance. This evening, you'll hear from several of us. You'll hear an overview of the housing element requirements, an outline of the document, what's in it. Along the way, there are some proposed changes to the staff report and document. The first set of changes is in the revised staff report. The changes are in the area of the policies and some of the statistics, which I have to say that I synthesized, and the housing tools folks made sure that the data in here was corrected. You'll hear more about the policies and the goals in the further update. There's a matrix of policies in the document that housing tools will go over. So from the planning side, what we use the housing element for, and what this commission uses this housing element for, is zoning, to ensure that there's enough land for the appropriate types of housing that's needed in this community, to review and approve housing projects, of course, and you've seen many, many affordable housing projects come through this commission in the last year or two, and to administer the zoning and general plan land use policies that are consistent with this document. Much of this document also relates directly to our housing department's mission, so we think it's important to provide you an overview of the housing department that we have here and the programs that are affected by this element. And we have Amy Bergstrand, who is our housing division director, and she will make a short PowerPoint presentation.
Did I open the hearing on this? I'm just curious, with the commissioners, does any of the commissioners get through reading the whole thing? The whole document? Because I only made it.
I think are the important parts.
Yeah, I only made it halfway through, so what I'm leading up to is I may ask that we continue this for another meeting if we can't get through it all tonight, 'cause it's too darn important just to push through.
Well, one of the observations I made is that it's still in the public comment period for this. And I was going to ask if it's appropriate to make a recommendation before the public comment period ends, because I certainly would like to hear public comments, so.
Well, the recommendation would go to city council, and that comment period extends past, well, up to the city council date. So all comments received would be incorporated or assessed and incorporated as necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, we cannot actually close it before the city council acts on it. So.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. As Wes said, I'm Amy Bergstrand. I'm the Director of the Housing Department. It's actually the Business Assistance and Housing Development Department. For purposes tonight, we're the Housing Division. The primary objective of the Business Assistance and Housing Development Department is to provide community services, decent housing, and to expand business opportunities that are beneficial to the citizens of Oroville. The department administers projects, programs, and activities that are funded primarily by federal, state, and local grant funding and other resources. As far as the housing portion, we really design programs and activities to offer decent, safe, and sanitary, affordable housing for eligible citizens. So I just wanted to take a moment to outline some of the ways that my department relates to the housing element. And there are a number of programs that we currently provide to our citizens. We have the Homeownership Assistance Program, the Owner-Occupied Rehabilitation Program. We provide multifamily new construction with developers. We provide an emergency grant program, and then we also administer the housing loan portfolio. And then we also take responsibility for annual reporting for the housing element, for the SB 341 report, and then also fair housing to the state on all of our programs. Our first program is the home ownership. I'm just going to briefly go through some of these. If you have more detailed questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But our home ownership assistance has been around almost for 30 years. We provide loans to income qualified borrowers making 80% or less of area median income. The maximum amount is 100,000 or 45% of the purchase price, whichever is less, and it's a 3% interest rate. These are interest forgiveness after a certain amount of time of being in the home. We will forgive interest, but we never forgive the principal. We also have an owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program, and the same income guidelines are the same as the housing program. The repayment depends on their ability to pay, so we do deferred payments, interest-only payments, or fully amortized based on their debt-to-income ratio. These are primarily to fix health and safety issues in the home or to bring the housing home up to building compliance. Next. The city works in partnership with affordable developers, and as you've noticed, there's been a lot of development in our city. We work with programs called the Home Program, MHP Program, and most currently the Disaster MHP Program. And these are federal and state programs that will assist the developers and provide loans in order to build not market rate, affordable rated housing. We also work looking at our RENA numbers, which they'll go over in detail tonight, to determine what type of housing that we need in the city of Oroville. And then the city monitors, does long-term monitoring for the life of the loan for every year. So we take depending upon the size of the project, we take a sample of the units and make sure that their incomes are still in line with what they were supposed to be, that the house is still in condition and also on the full property. We do provide emergency grants, and these are basically small types that they don't have to be repaid for emergency repairs in homes. So a lot of it's for like ramps in a home, or if there's like a plumbing issue, then we'll do grants. And for single-family homes, it's $1,000 per year, or the lifetime is $2,000. And then for mobile homes, that's a little bit more, where the lifetime is $3,000. Okay. And then one of the big components of my department is we manage that loan portfolio. So anytime somebody makes a payment on their loan or they pay off their loan, it becomes program income, and then we can re-loan out that money. So it's revolving and it keeps moving. Currently, we're managing 362 loans, and that includes first-time homebuyer loans, rehab loans, affordable housing loans, and economic development loans. And it's $38 million right now is what our portfolio balance is. And then just so you have an idea, the last 2 years, we received a lot of payoffs, and we've had 1.7 million in payoffs this year, and last year was 1.8 million. So. And then another big component of our department is reporting. So we do all the annual reporting, collecting demographic data, ethnic data for the state on all our programs. And we analyze it, decide if we're doing a good job and how we're going to do our outreach in the future. And also, we for the housing element, we do the reporting on all of the permits pulled and units developed for the city. That's basically it. I mean, not it, but do you have any questions?
The feds cover the risk of banks making loans to certain people. When I was with Sacramento County, I handled the CDBG program and set aside monies to do a similar type thing where...
Exactly.
Huh?
It's exactly CDBG. We use CDBG and home funds.
And do you do that? Is that part of this program?
Yeah, so it's our...
I didn't see it in here.
Right. Our first-time homebuyer program is like a down payment subsidy program. It can either be FHA or conventional. And so the FHA provides some insurance, mortgage insurance for the loans, but we don't insure it. We just loan the money. We have had foreclosures during the downturn of the economic, of the housing market, but they're not insured, so there are some losses. If that's what you're asking, I'm not sure if I'm...
Yeah, well, the program I'd set up, it sounds like it's the same thing, was went to the banks and said, look, we'll cover some of the risk. Use our funds to cover some of the risk if you make a loan to this person that's trying to rehab their house and so forth. And
Yeah.
I get the feeling that that's the kind of program you're doing too.
Yes,
It's so important.
it is.
On an individual, moderate, low-income situation. It just reduces the risk to the lenders, which opens up the door to the need.
Right. Yeah, and if you know of anybody that needs a rehab loan, we definitely need applicants.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You need applicants for what?
The rehab.
The rehabilitation
You have
program.
money for that?
Oh, yeah.
$1 million?
We have 750,000 for that program. We have almost 3 million for first-time homebuyer.
Correct. And what's the
Income.
maximum price on the city program for that? 330?
361 now. It was increased June 15th.
361.
What's the income limitations?
Those just went up too. So for a family of one, do you have that on you?
Just,
I would say 38,000, 42,000 would be for a family of one. 80%? 80%? For one person? For one. Yeah. So.
Family of two.
So, and it's getting more difficult to find that right borrower because our income limits are low compared to what our maximum purchase price is. So it's very narrow. The other thing now is the interest rates going up, so it's going to be even harder to find qualified buyers. And we have a lot of money right now with all the payoffs that we received to lend. So hoping some things, we haven't slowed down yet, but I'm expecting it to slow.
Do you publish this information? Do you?
Yeah, we reach out
On
to
your
the.
website, or do you guys
it's on
get
our-
it out to?
It's on our website. We put it out to the association, and we put it on our website and our Facebook page.
but, you just do like single-family homes or apartment complexes?
We are purchasing our single-family homes. They can be condominiums or duplexes too, but they can only purchase the one side, not both sides. For rehabs, we would rehab a duplex, but it would have to be the side that they're living in, not the shared side. So
Is that state law or something, or is that?
we could do more, but there's a lot more oversight, and there's more. We have decided we don't have capacity to do duplexes, and there's more environmental work to it.
That's changed from when I was doing it back in,
Yeah.
we want to go how far back. Late 70s, early 80s, I was doing, helping in commercial areas that were run down and they needed help, so.
We aren't
But you don't
currently.
do that here.
We aren't currently doing any commercial rehabilitations. And in the past, we have done multifamily rehabilitations, but again, the state's made it a lot harder to do, and the city doesn't have the capacity to do that right now. And
But the law doesn't prohibit you from doing it.
No.
so-
mostly it's affordable developers or people that want to come in and purchase an apartment complex that might be in decline, and then they'll find you'll go through that program but not directly through the city making the loan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are very lucky to have Amy. She's been doing this for the city of Oroville for 19 years. And so she really knows what she's doing. So we're lucky to have her.
Haley.
The element itself has a number of required sections, which are consultant housing tools. We'll explain to you in more detail. And we have James Coles and Serena Rye. Did I pronounce the Rye right? Right. Here to present to you.
Good evening, Chair Durling and Vice Chair Jenkins. Good to be with you this evening. My name is James Coles. I'm with Housing Tools, and we are assisting the city of Oroville with their housing element. And we've been working on a number of housing elements in Butte County and in the North State. So it's good to kind of have that perspective regionally, as well as learning how we can meet the needs of your particular city. So I think Wes provided a good overview, so I'll be brief on some of the overview, but this slide here just provides an outline of the things that I will go over. I'll do an overview of the housing element. We'll go over the regional housing needs allocation, which is a key part. We'll go over major legislative changes impacting the housing element, and there have been a number, many over the last 5 years. And we'll go over the adequate sites inventory, which is a key component of the housing element. And then we'll go over some of the key actions or programs that are included. And then finally, we'll have the questions and comments from commissioners and the public. So the purpose of the housing element is really to be a policy document to guide the city for the next 8 years. It's not an amendment to your municipal code or a particular project or program. It's more of a policy document and a work plan. If there are particular code amendments or things that are part of the work plan, then those more detailed amendments and discussion would come before you at a later date and would also need to be approved by the city council. So this is an 8-year cycle. You were asking me about 4 years. It used to be a 5-year cycle. It's now an 8-year cycle that the housing element is adopted. It must be consistent with the general plan. It is one of the elements of the general plan. So the next slide shows the periods of time that we're working with here. So the existing and expiring housing element will be expiring. It has expired. Technically, the period was 2014 to 2021. And then the new housing element period is 2022 to 2030. So state oversight is a critical part of this process. It is administered by the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and they review and are required to certify housing elements. And approval provides access to state funding. Since 2014, the state has amended the housing element law through numerous bills, and as mentioned, there's been a number. We'll go over some key ones that have occurred during the last planning cycle of the housing element. These are the various topics that are included in the housing element that's mandated by state housing element law. So we have a public participation process, a review of the previous housing element, a housing needs assessment, an adequate sites inventory, a financial inventory, a constraints analysis, an assessment of fair housing, and then a goals, objectives, and actions. And really the heart of it is the goals, objectives, and actions. And we'll go over that. I want to give an overview of the public participation process. It's been quite extensive and has occurred over the last year. We started out in September with the Salmon Festival. We had a booth there, and we were able to talk to various residents that were there at the festival to share more about the housing element and what the plans were for the timeline, the opportunities to participate. And we also gave them an opportunity to participate in our community survey, in which we had 2. We also had 2 community meetings, the first one on October 20th of last year. We had the first community survey going from September 25th through October 22nd. Then we had a second community meeting on November 17th. of last year, and then a community survey from December 20th, 2021 to January 3rd, 2022. We are also in the 30-day public comment period on the housing element draft, which will last until the city council hearing date of July 19th. We have the planning commission hearing meeting today, and then we'll have the city council hearing that's currently scheduled for July 19th. To find out more about the housing element, we've had a housing element webpage that has been open since we began this process, and that's where you can find information about the purpose of the housing element, about the surveys, the meetings, the summaries of the meetings and the surveys, and the schedule going forward, the draft of the document. So that's all at orovillehousingelement.com, and the link's up there on that slide. We had a pretty extensive stakeholder contact list. I also want to mention 150 contacts that we emailed out regarding the various outreach events. We had social media announcements as well, and we provided translation and live interpretation in the meetings in English, Hmong, and Spanish. Now we'll go over the regional housing needs allocation. This is a foundation of the housing element process, and it is a process to determine the amount of housing that must be planned for to accommodate future growth, and it's segmented by income levels, which we'll go over. The Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, is established through HCD and then more locally through the Butte County Association of Governments, or BCAG, and those housing goals are then allocated between the different jurisdictions within Butte County using various demographic data to arrive at those goals. So the next couple tables will show the RHNA for this past planning period, which is 2014 to 2022, and then for the next period, which is 2022 to 2030. So this shows the RHNA here for this period expiring. It's segmented by the various income levels, and then it shows units produced and the percentage of RHNA produced. Now, these are goals. These are not hard requirements for achieving, but it's helpful to just see and track progress. I think Amy was mentioning how permits and progress is tracked, and an annual report is provided to HCD on the progress. Oh, what did I do? Oh. So this is the RHNA for the next planning period from 2022 to 2030, and shows the allocation between the different income levels. So an overview of some of the major legislative changes that impact housing element law. One is accessory dwelling units. These are often called granny flats or second units that are on a single family lot. This has been a major strategy to address housing statewide and has been incorporated into the legislation that we're citing here. And there's various laws that limit local agencies' ability to restrict development, that facilitate development, so that there are limits on the regulatory constraints for ADUs.
Sorry to interrupt. I believe I just heard on the radio today about a Senate bill allowing up to 4 residential units on one parcel.
That's probably SB 9 that they were referring to, which is a different law. This is for allowing a single unit on a single family lot that is a smaller unit, an accessory dwelling, but the SB 9 is kind of still in motion. You don't see, we're not really covering that in this housing element. I'm sure in the next housing element it'll be.
Would that be 4 of that type of unit, or well, a main unit and 3 auxiliary
for
units?
SB 9, it's a I'm not prepared to go into the details now. I'm sure you will be able to do so later.
Sorry about that. I just
But,
heard-
you know,
heard about it
that
today.
is, I can say that that's more of a subdivision, right? Where you can create 4 units within a lot of a certain size. So that's a little different than the accessory dwelling unit.
We've looked at
law.
SB 9 and SB 10 a little bit, and there are enough caveats in that some of our objective standards, like the minimum lot size and some other things, make it rather hard to just go split your lot into 4 and build 4 units. But we haven't finished our analysis of that. With regard to ADUs, we do have a second home ordinance. That's what our ordinance is called. But it has not been updated for all of these, this new legislation that's occurred, and that is on our to-do list to update to all the new ADU laws. We've had about 10 ADUs, I think, permitted in this jurisdiction in the last 2.5 years or so. So it's not a big, not big numbers, although it could be.
AB 671, which we're highlighting here, you'll see is one of the programs in the housing element. It's required that every housing element adopt a program that incentivizes and promotes the creation of ADUs that offer affordable rents for very low, or moderate income households. There is also a major section of the housing element that you've probably seen that is dedicated to affirmatively furthering fair housing, which is another new piece of legislation that's required for housing elements. And so it's quite significant, you'll see from the analysis. The analysis must address 5 key fair housing issues: fair housing enforcement and outreach capacity, segregation and integration, racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty, disparities in access to opportunity, and disproportionate housing needs and displacement risk. Also, we must review the adequate sites inventory, where we're identifying sites for the RHNA to identify any fair housing issues with those, and look at through that fair housing lens, which is also part of Chapter 5, where the adequate sites inventory discussion is located. And then we'll go to the recommended fair housing amendments. So staff handed out a summary of amendments to fair housing, to the fair housing section here. And this is to address the most current feedback that we're receiving from HCD on the fair housing analysis, to ensure that we are addressing them in a way that the housing element can be certified. So we're recommending that you include this amendment with the motion that you passed to recommend forward the housing element to the City Council. To summarize that, we've narrowed the contributing factors table down to 6 issues, and we better aligned the factors identified by HCD there, and then we've identified programs to address those factors. The 2 programs that are new, that are included in that handout, are Program 6.1.4, which is participate in wildfire recovery groups, and then 6.3.5, which is apply for funding sources for public activities. The adequate sites inventory and note net loss requirements are the last major piece of new legislation that I wanted to cover. There have been some changes to the site's inventory requirements. This is where we identify sites that can be built with various levels of affordable housing that will meet the RENA for this next planning period. So there were some changes to how that inventory is done, how capacity for units is calculated, density requirements, infrastructure requirements, size requirements, and so on. And then SB 166 is also a no net loss law that requires a jurisdiction to regularly monitor progress in the RENA and the site's inventory. If there are significant changes to the site's inventory, for example, if something that was included there that has been rezoned from residential to commercial or has been downzoned so that there's less capacity for units, then that would be part of this no net loss assessment that would be done annually, and you would replace a site that may have changed use or reduced capacity with another site, so to make sure that you're still meeting the RENA for the site's inventory. And something to clarify about the site's inventory, it doesn't require that the units are actually built. It's more of an exercise to identify there's adequate land available that's appropriately zoned for these different income levels. If affordable housing is built on other sites, you can still count that towards your RENA. It's just an exercise to ensure that you're making the land and appropriately zoned available. So the site's inventory for this housing element is summarized here. There's the various affordability tiers for very low and low income. The requirement was 177 units, and so we've identified 262 sites for 262 units. So there is a surplus of 85, and then for the moderate, we've identified 77. We have a surplus of 4, and then above moderate, 390, a surplus of 15. So the good news is there are adequate sites appropriately zoned currently to meet that RENA. You would not have to, at this point, go through any type of rezone or other process to find those sites. And then we'll summarize some of the key programs here. There's 2 slides, but this first slide are all programs that are addressing changes to the state housing element law to ensure that you're in compliance. So first, this allow low barrier navigation centers by right in areas zoned for mixed use and non-residential that allow multifamily development. We talked about ADUs, so this program 1.2.5 is to incentivize the production of ADUs with rents affordable to low to moderate income households. And then under the remove constraints, program 2.1.2 is establish the no net loss unit production evaluation program. There are 3 programs here grouped on allowing different types of housing in residentially zoned districts. Agricultural farm worker housing, transitional housing, and supportive housing. And then 2.1.7 is to meet the state law for ADUs, as we had summarized, to remove constraints to the production of ADUs. And then 2.1.8 is decrease parking requirements for emergency shelters. And that's for new emergency shelters. The second slide here are other noteworthy programs. Develop a community engagement program to identify and meet the housing needs of the local workforce. Direct capital and housing improvements to neighborhoods in need of revitalization, which was an important part of the fair housing analysis, was identifying those areas in need of revitalization and investment. 5.1.2 is incentivize the use of green energy for residents and businesses to give them opportunities for green energy. And then goal 6 is the required fair housing goal, improve fair housing choice, and equitable access to opportunity. So we made it through there. That last slide was just to show again the Housing Element website. And then we have a period for questions and public comments. So I can sit down here for any public comments and then be happy to address to the best of our ability any questions that you have.
Do we get to ask our questions now?
We do have one public comment.
Okay.
Marissa Maxey.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Marisa Maxey. I am the director of the LEAD project, which is a branch of the California Health Collaborative.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. We're a branch of the California Health Collaborative, which is actually a public health nonprofit. We've done some work in Oroville on legislative policies in the last few years. Our stance is that general plan updates and especially housing element updates are actually kind of an area of opportunity to try to improve health and wellness of community residents. Last October, November, I was fortunate enough to have a series of conversations with Mr. Irvin and Ms. Rye regarding the inclusion of health-related language into a housing element update. I was encouraging them to include language that kind of supported the idea of collaboration between public health representatives and organizations and the planning department, or language that encouraged protective policies in the future, either voluntary from individual property owners or legislative policies through the city of Oroville, protections against exposure to secondhand smoke in multifamily housing. In the packets I provided it's the model language that I provided is generic. It's not custom language for the Oroville housing element update, but I did provide examples of model language that's been successful in other jurisdictions and housing elements, and then a rationale. There's statistics in there, and then kind of a more thorough explanation of why it is important to include health-related language in housing elements. So there was an email early in October in which I was under the impression that this information or some language would be incorporated into the housing element update, specifically into the affirmatively furthering fair housing section. I had a chance to read through the draft recently, and I did not find any instances where secondhand smoke or third-hand smoke or collaborations with public health organizations were addressed. And I was a little bit disappointed about that, which is why I'm giving comment. Addressing exposure to secondhand smoke or third-hand smoke is really important because in multifamily housing, some of our most vulnerable community members live there. So everyone knows that in multifamily housing, there's large populations of female-headed households, people with cognitive or physical disabilities, people with low incomes, elderly families with young children. So because of this current housing situation, if there's a good possibility that you're stuck where you're at. So if you're in multifamily housing and your neighbor smokes, you will be exposed to secondhand smoke through shared ventilation, through open doors, through open windows. And regardless of whether or not you have young children or you're elderly, or if you have, say, a health condition that could be exacerbated by secondhand smoke, there's a really good chance that you're stuck where you're at, and you might not have the option to leave your housing for a healthier situation. So there's all sorts of ways that this kind of language can be incorporated, not just in the ways that I kind of provided. One of the pages that I put in there, I was also working with the City of Chico and housing tools, and they are incorporating some language, and it's simply kind of encourages collaboration between Butte County Public Health, my organization, which is the California Health Collaborative, and the City of Chico in just disseminating information to individual property owners and educating them about what they can do about exposure to secondhand smoke. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you. That's it.
I had a question for her. Can I ask her a question? Is this only for multiple housing facilities, not for, like if you have a residence and a multiple housing facility right next door, you can have quite a few people smoking, and it can really negatively affect the single-family residents next door to a very large group home. So I'm wondering, is this not part of this? This is only in multifamily structures?
So the language that I provided, and again, when I provided it, it was more of an example of like, this is what you can do with the housing element, and this is how you can incorporate it. So in this case, the language that I provided is specifically about multifamily housing. The thing is that, you know, we have to, normally if we're talking about tobacco policies and it's a you know, a traditional legislative policy, we're going to be really ironclad in our language, but we can't do that in a housing element. So we have to keep things more broad. So, you know, I would say something like encourage property owners. I can't really get too specific because it's going into a portion of the general plan, like I would with, you know, a tobacco control policy. So if we were actually to pass a smoke-free multi-unit housing legislative policy outside of the housing element, then we can get into specifics and say it can't be this many feet from a multi-unit housing complex, but I don't think that we could do that here.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
So I do remember speaking and emailing with Marissa back in the October timeframe that she mentioned, and just all things happening all at once. I did not forward this recommendation to have it included in the housing element. I don't know, Serena, if there's anything in there relating to this or not, but staff would have no objections if it was a planning commission's desire to include something like this in there.
This is Serena Rye with Housing Tools. Currently, there is not any language supporting this in the document.
Well, it looks like what's proposed is just almost ethereal with no real teeth or anything behind it, right? Just encouraging and promoting, and I don't know who is responsible for doing those kinds of things. If that's you or what, I don't think that's really identified in here. Is it going to make a difference if we add it or not? I don't know. That's my question.
The implementation that I see, or one possible ways to implement this would be that if a rehab loan or a first-time home buyer loan were made, materials would be disseminated at that time about smoke-free environments and such, and not exposing children to secondhand smoke, et cetera. some kind of a condition that information get disseminated as part of the training that these borrowers go through or grantees go through. That's just one possible way.
This is for multifamily housing only, right?
Well, it's her.
I was going to ask if there's much expense on our end for doing something like that, or?
So again, the language that I provided was for multifamily housing, and it was intentionally very soft language. There are instances where jurisdictions have been a lot more specific about their policies that they're kind of shooting for. That is not in the original information that I provided. I would be happy to provide harder language if anyone was interested in taking a look at it.
So if I understand, let me see if I understand. So, because we don't want to limit property rights.
Yeah.
So, if this is subsidized housing, where are you for tenants who are their rent is being subsidized, right? Then maybe a restriction of non-smoking can be put in it if your rent's being subsidized. There's rules, right? You can't make a single-family owner make his property non-smoking. I mean, a lot of the properties that we manage, most landlords don't want smoking. That's their rule, which is fine. I don't know how we can put it in a housing element that you can't have non-smoking. I think it's a good idea to protect children and the elderly who might be sick. That's good. I don't know where legally, right?
That's where we are recommending that the language be soft in nature.
It's very
And-
soft.
Yeah.
It's encourage new and existing, these developments to implement voluntary smoke-free policies to protect residents from exposure. That's very simple, and it's all ages. I know people who cannot go in their
No,
backyard.
and that's fine, but what I'm saying, is there a
So
way, like you said, there's no teeth. But I mean,
Right.
if it is a government subsidized, does that give it teeth?
As far as regular smoking, I don't think so. As far as marijuana, which we probably don't want to get into that, but if it's federally funded, it's not prohibited. You cannot have, for our homes, our loan portfolio, if they were federally funded, they cannot have, we can't really say smoke, but they can't grow marijuana on their property, even though it's legal. It's not something that's legal through federal funds. But I don't think there's anything we could do we can do what Wes suggested, and we can put a pamphlet in our packet, our application packet. We have notifications on lead-based paint, the cautions of that. We can put a caution in our packet on secondhand smoke and smoking. That's something we could easily do.
As
For
a-
our programs.
yeah, as a-
The city does
That was my
not.
question,
yeah,
is how
the
easy, how,
city-
is there a burden?
I'm just saying, how does it
Just
fit
copying,
into the,
just copying.
in the housing element, or does it fit?
I don't know.
Isn't it
I
just
don't
the
see that it
start
does.
of the conversation? It's just getting the information out there because there's so much power in just communication, and it's just a start. I mean, I don't think it has to solve the problem.
No,
I'm not
But it-
saying there was a problem that it didn't have any teeth. I was just trying to make sure I understood what we're talking about.
no, I mean, there's two
so.
sides to every coin. I mean, we've come a long way from smoking in public. Then, I mean, in the 80s, we smoked in office buildings, smoked in restaurants, smoked in anywhere. Now you can't, you're vilified if you smoke.
And smoking rates have plummeted.
They have.
I can
Well,
tell you as a health data
cigarettes are
analyst.
$15 a pack too, but you see what I'm saying? So, I mean, I think it's a good idea.
So, pardon me for interrupting, but that's exactly right. It's kind of like a jumping off point. So it would be a way of the city of Oroville to, in an official capacity, say, we believe that it would be healthier if, depending on what kind of language was included, multifamily housing was smoke-free, and we encourage that. So it's almost like a way of endorsing it without you having to commit to particular actions unless those are included underneath in some kind of policy bullet point, in the way that, you know, if the city of Oroville was to say all new developments have to be smoke-free, then that would be something completely different. So this is really just intended as like a first step. It's intended as a way for like Butte County Public Health and their tobacco control department and other nonprofits that deal with public health to just kind of start a conversation with the planning department. I mean, we're all very siloed in what we do, but ultimately, you know, all of these different conversations have to do with health and well-being. It's just a different language. So, it's intended as a stepping stone. And again, I'm happy to provide more harder, like more concrete language examples. I kept it intentionally very soft and kind of vanilla for that initial outreach.
Like I know in my neighborhood, there was a jailhouse that was a neighbor to me that had, I think, 15 inmates, and they smoked outside. Now that was really hard, really, really hard to have that many people smoking outside. I think maybe they had to smoke outside. I got the impression they weren't allowed to smoke inside. So that is really hard when the neighbors can't breathe fresh air when you're so tight. It's not. So anyway, I don't know if this is the place to add it, but I love it as just making a statement of something that is positive in a direction, something we could think about.
The County of Colusa did successfully include language about encouraging smoke-free multifamily housing in their housing element update. I think it's been probably a couple of years. So there are some smaller jurisdictions that are starting to try to incorporate it.
Has there been a measurable outcome observed with adding this language to housing elements?
It's brand new, so not at this point. If there is data, it would probably be for really large jurisdictions. Like I know San Diego has some pretty robust housing or health language in their general plan, but it doesn't really apply to, you know, Oroville or Butte County. So it's too new to have any kind of data.
So if it is the pleasure of the commission, we can ask Housing Tools to find one of our policies an appropriate place to put in some sort of soft language into one of our policies and programs.
I'd
What
say
page?
I would
find it.
somewhere between pages 5 and 307. No.
What
Yes,
page?
I would ask Housing Tools to make a recommendation there.
I'm serious though. If you're gonna have a policy like that in the housing element, we need to make sure that it is positioned in the housing element to make sense. If it does nothing more than say, encourage and, you know,
Yeah,
all that stuff.
yeah, I don't like encourage. If it's an action, we make it that we are going to distribute informational materials when you have an interaction with however you have interaction with people.
Exactly. I don't recommend that it be a policy,
Right.
just educational information, because the enforcement is not there to back it up.
These examples seem to do that, don't they? They're just, it's not a policy, it's just collaborate and educate. Or are you saying these recommendations are not what you're thinking?
I'm saying,
don't
I would say instead of saying encourage or incentivize, that to actually say, we are going to disseminate our, the materials that we're gonna.
I would say encourage, as opposed to we are going to do this. But Serena, what would your recommendation be?
And the language that was provided is
share.
specific to multifamily, so that would be something that we would have to work through with the developers that are applying for funding in our area, and it's not something that we actually enforce. I mean, we could say when we're meeting with them that we encourage smoke, you know what I mean? And for our programs, it's not multifamily, we're single family. And we could still provide that, but.
Well, our action would still be just be disseminating information and materials, right?
Right.
And just so everybody's saying, that would be easier to track and monitor and say, yes, we did this, instead of just saying, oh, we encouraged. That doesn't mean anything, so, yeah.
There are also many, many touch points with our low income and our supportive populations with public health and behavioral health and other entities and organizations in Butte County. So it might not be very difficult to find ways to include the smoking and discouraging smoking in multifamily housing as we work with the continuum of care and other entities. So.
I could suggest some possible language. This is something that we put together for the Chico housing element. Disseminate information to affordable housing by July. We're required to have some time frame, and so we had by July 2023, and refer property managers with an interest in smoke-free housing to Butte County Public Health on an annual basis. It could be something similar to that.
I've had to put together several right-of-way acquisition packets. Not quite the same thing, but we had to include several different handouts that didn't seem to have anything to do with what we were doing. Do you make handouts?
Yeah.
Could you supply housing with handouts, and housing could distribute those? And this could be like a off-the-books policy of housing to distribute your pamphlet to applicants?
We're certainly, I'm able to do custom educational materials. So if there was a certain demographic of people, a certain type of housing, then I could create that.
It wouldn't cost the city anything that way, and
the point of having it in housing element update or housing element again is it's an official way of the city to recognize that is probably what's in the best interest in terms of health and wellness for their community. So I'm happy to provide custom educational materials regardless of what happens with the housing element. That's always something that we can do. But there are definitely benefits for having it in that document. Especially if you're including language that talks about collaborating with Butte County Public Health.
And that's where I still recommend that we keep this very soft language, because we rely on Butte County Public Health to be the enforcing factor here, and we support that. So that's where, again, recommending that this be soft language in our housing element, so that's not another layer of enforcement on our end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we would create educational materials if there was something custom in collaboration with Butte County Public Health. If there's something particular that someone wanted, we'd be happy to do that, and it would be our responsibility. I mean, that's what I intended. Our responsibility to bring those materials to you, and which is why the language was soft.
Let's say a developer comes into the city, and I'm not sure the city still does give density bonuses for a homeowners association in order to get better somethings or whatever out of it.
We do have a density bonus
Okay, so,
ordinance.
A developer comes in for a major 50-unit project, and he wants to have a homeowners association so he can control, and by the way, I'm saying he because this is what I used to do, and I'm a he. He wants to control certain aspects of the project so that it's more marketable to people to come and live there, because certain things are controlled. Now, in this case, we're talking about controlling smoking in some fashion. Now, in the case of that kind of a project, where you have a homeowners association, you could negotiate this type of thing. So the question is there some way of putting gentle language into the housing element that in those kind of cases it would encourage staff to, work with that aspect of the homeowners association?
Well, this is specific to multifamily housing.
Huh?
This would be specific to multifamily housing and not single-family
Okay,
subdivisions.
so you have a major project where you're getting density bonuses for an apartment complex, a 200-unit apartment complex.
So then you would be recommending an addition to the zoning code for that density? Because then,
What I'm asking, do we have an element in the city already that gives those kind of bonuses for certain things
yes.
in apartment complexes?
Is it,
Yes, we have various incentives built into our city codes. If a developer requests it, has a lot of site constraints and may need to reduce parking or some other incentive in there. Usually parking is one of the big ones. And they negotiate that with staff, and then that goes to the city council for
Okay,
approval.
so you could include in the discussion of that negotiation, we'd like to see language in your rental agreements or whatever that talk about smoking. I mean, that's very feasible. I mean, it would fit. So the question to me is, if we want to do something like that, where do we put it in the housing element? Because we're talking about the housing element here, not a smoking ordinance. So the question is, where in the housing element do we want some language that suggests that type of effort with that type of project?
I will defer to our consultant for
Huh?
that. I'm going to defer to our consultant for that best location.
Alrighty.
Sorry to put you on the spot, James.
Well,
what
it
he's
doesn't
already
fit
said.
neatly into the goals and policies that we currently have in the housing element. But I was looking, I mean, if you wanted to include a program, I think the best place to put it would be in policy 4.1, protect existing residential neighborhoods from deterioration.
page are you on?
That would be on, I'll find it for you. Page 36.
Is that the,
You have the
Is that the-
non-square color?
is that the square one? or-
Oh, you're looking at the chart.
It's
It
in-
would be policy
Oh.
4.1, if you can find that.
What is it?
Square page is 87.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Square page 87.
Policy, under goal 4, policy 4.1. And
Oh,
goal-
there you go.
Yeah, goal 4 is preserve, rehabilitate, and enhance existing housing and neighborhoods. Policy 4.1 is protect existing residential neighborhoods from deterioration, encroachment of incompatible or potentially disruptive land use and/or activities. So I would think the most concrete, now, remember, you do need to report on progress with these programs. You do need to be as concrete as possible in the timing of when they will be accomplished, and then you need to report in your annual report to HCD of how you're doing with that. So that's kind of the disadvantage of the soft language. But if we had something where the city is providing information, materials, perhaps from Butte County Public Health or other entities about the benefits of smoke-free environments, I think that would be a more concrete, kind of trackable program, and you could include that as a program under policy 4.1.
Okay.
But I think that's where it would go under policy 4.1.
Okay, commissioners, if in the motions or whatever you want to include something like that, it would be in, was it policy 4.1? And some general language, so whoever does the motion can suggest that kind of language and see if there's consensus on the commission. But to me, if you're gonna do it, do it. Don't pussyfoot around with it. Get it in the housing element, and so it's there, and the staff has a little ammunition that they can negotiate with. Say, we're going to reduce your parking requirements, but included with that is we want some type of thing in your rental agreements that about smoking. I don't know. Anyway, that's where I'm coming from, and that's where I'm going back to. So.
Okay.
So that would be program 4.1.3 within that policy 4.1. Language to be determined.
There's some really general language.
You mean what she recommended?
Yeah,
Which I think.
you were marketing.
James, did you read us some language?
Well, yeah, I mean, the language that had been used, this is an example from the Chico housing element. This, again, this is something you could easily track and kind of report on progress, is like, is the dissemination of information to affordable housing complexes on smoke-free housing policies and coordinate with Butte County Public Health on an annual basis.
So,
I like that
yeah,
soft language here.
yeah.
But it goes in this section, you're saying? Or is that a whole
It would
different
go-
section?
It would be program.
Okay,
So, yeah.
okay,
So
yeah,
now we have
I like it.
a policy and we have a place to put it. And then the staff knows how to use it. So maybe we accomplish something. But I was getting worried.
Again, we don't want to make, we don't want to make anything burdensome on you. I mean, we know resources and such. It's. Yeah, perfect.
Does staff understand the language we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, do you understand where it's supposed to go?
Yes.
So if we take a motion to adopt that, you know what to do.
Absolutely.
Got it. Thank you.
I will so move.
Huh?
I will so move.
Oh, you gotta, oh, well, if
You said
Can
it.
you do the motion?
no,
You're not
I
allowed?
can't do the motion.
Okay, then.
What I'm saying is, well, first of all, is there any more discussion about the housing element or anything else?
Oh, well, I have
Well,
questions.
are we just motioning about the addition of the,
I would include it in the general motion.
for,
For
of recommending,
Oh, okay.
of pushing the housing element
Right.
to,
Exactly.
okay. Are we
It
ready,
makes it
are we
easier.
ready for that yet? Because I don't know if we
Make it
are.
easier for staff, I think, right? Yep. So if whoever's gonna do the motion to approve or recommend approval to the city council, include the language that we're talking about to be added.
So we can ask questions now, though. We don't
Huh?
have to decide what we're doing exactly right now, because I have a couple questions.
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
So my question is, what exactly, I'm on page 11, I think, of what you were proposing. Can you define what low barrier navigation centers are? And I'm sorry that I don't know what they are.
Yeah, this is a new piece of legislation, and they are fairly new as a housing strategy for addressing homelessness. So a navigation center is a place where people experiencing homelessness can go to receive services and to direct them to permanent housing options. So usually it's a place where they could get warm or dry, have some place with some services where they can, they're usually local community services where they can access those, get some assistance, and also be referred to housing that's available in the community. And it's a strategy that's become more and more common across the state and the country. And so this is the state legislation is to require that jurisdictions allow navigation centers, should one be proposed, in zoning districts that allow mixed uses and residential zones that permit multifamily uses. And the program there references the law. So it's a way of removing some barriers for a low barrier navigation center in those zones, should one be proposed.
So basically, does it mean that the city would not be able to say no to any of them that were proposed in any mixed-use area? It has to be
right.
permitted completely, unlimited?
It would need to be allowed by right, so with no discretionary planning commission review. Certain standards could be applied, but the use would need to be allowed by right in those zones.
And, well, I'm completely against that. I'm sorry. Is that?
As I understand it, low barrier means that you don't, there aren't a lot of requirements of the person who's getting the services, right?
Correct.
Right.
Right. The idea is that you are providing people with an opportunity to get off the streets, to access the services they need, get the help that they need. So not putting barriers into accessing that navigation center.
But currently, we have things like that, but there is a limit to how many can be, I think, at least that's what I learned from code enforcement, in certain areas. So this is taking that away?
Yeah, within those zones,
Mixed use?
it is required, right. So this is area zone mixed uses or non-residential zones permitting multifamily uses. And so I think the city has a couple commercial zones where multifamily is permitted, so.
In all our mixed use zones, including corridor mixed use, allows housing such as this. So this is also a broader question that needs to be resolved as part of this housing element. As James mentioned, low barrier navigation centers is a new term of art. It has not found its way into our codes, city codes yet. The closest thing we have is sort of an emergency shelter. But you mentioned the other types of housing that exist, the supportive housing, which is approved up next to the county recorder's office up there for supportive housing in which a tenant has a separate bedroom, kitchen, and bath. I looked this up after our discussion. Transitional housing, which is often also called sober living environments, and residential care facilities, which provide 24-hour care. And that typically is a separate unit with a bath, and often there's a common kitchen and such. So each of these has slightly different floor plans and services that are offered, and our codes allow these by right up to 6 beds in residential districts, and require them to go to R3, R4 zoning or commercial zoning if there's 7 or more beds. And as part of this housing element, if you look at policies, programs 2.1.4, 2.1.5, 2.1.6, HCD wants to also require that we do not restrict the number of beds for all these types of housing. Residential care facilities, we can still limit the number of beds, but transitional and supportive housing, they're telling us to enact ordinances to allow as many beds as the facility can handle in any residential district.
They're telling us we don't have a choice?
Well, apparently state law it says that, but we've had a discussion with the city council about this, and you might have participated in that back in, I think it was January. And the council was disinclined to make any changes currently in our city ordinance, but this will have to be revisited at some point. It is possible that HCD would not certify our housing element if we didn't agree to move forward on something like this.
Wow.
So a lot more discussion has to happen on that, and we can include low barrier shelters in that discussion.
Yeah, if I can just clarify too, on those different housing types, the residential care facilities are 24-hour care facilities where there's beds in shared common facilities such as a kitchen. Often they don't have their own bathroom. They can be regulated, but they can be less regulated. That's a residential care facility, and currently your code allows that by right in all residential zones up to 6 persons, which is consistent with state law currently. On the other hand, for transitional housing and supportive housing, those are independent living units. So we're not talking about beds in a single house or commons. These are independent living units with their own kitchen and bathrooms. They're typically subsidized and more regulated because the funding programs have certain requirements that they're operated in certain ways and that they have funds for replacements and things like that. And now transitional is for temporary stays. It's anywhere between 6 and 24 months. And so supportive housing is permanent housing with supportive services. So I know it's all kind of confusing, but those are the different housing types we're talking about here. The programs that are in the housing element here are for, again, the transitional housing and the supportive housing, which is independent living. There are no recommendations right now in the housing element regarding the residential care facilities. So that would remain as is, where they are allowed by right with up to 6 persons. But if there are more than 6 persons in that residential care facility, use permit is required. And that's consistent with state law. So the changes that would be needed to bring the code in conformance with state law would be regarding the transitional and the supportive housing.
Are there any parking space requirements for any of this in residential areas? So the seasonal farm worker even, do they need to have 6 places to park off street, or?
I think the seasonal farm worker one is that you don't need parking spaces only for staff. Is that correct?
Because these are all in residential, correct? So there could be cars lining in front of everyone else's
Yes.
homes.
Well,
Yes.
the city can establish parking standards for the transitional, supportive, or agricultural worker housing. There is a program here with regard to emergency shelters that restricts parking. But the city can have its own standards for the other types. So I was just looking, the emergency shelter parking is in program 2.1.8, and that is a new law where they require that parking is limited to the staff that work at the shelter. But otherwise, for these other housing types, the city could have parking standards.
So they're pushing the parking out everywhere else.
Well, that, with regard to the emergency shelter, I think the idea is that most people at the shelter do not have cars, although some could, but most don't, and they're removing constraints to emergency shelters and limiting that just to the staff, but.
As I understand from the language, it's not that we're requiring parking, we're removing requirements for parking, right?
Right, for that program 2.1.8, that's the case, yeah.
So the proposed code changes here in our housing element, we would be working with the city attorney. Is there a deadline in the housing element in the policy for the city to take some action on these? And so we would have to work it all out over time, bring it back here, and then take it to the city council as well, to whatever ordinance the council would be willing to enact.
Your microphone.
There is a time frame, and for both, it's within 6 months of adoption of the housing element that the zoning code revision would need to be made.
Adoption or certification?
Well, the way it's worded now is adoption, but you could change that to certification.
Okay.
I had one more question. Back to the ADU requirement. I had heard that special districts did not have to allow the ADUs, like a historic district, but I heard it on the news. I don't know if that's accurate.
So the ADU requirement, well, one of them is to allow ADUs in all residential zoning districts. So I guess it depends on whether the historic is an overlay or not. But if if the base zone is residential, then ADUs need to be allowed.
We have permitted at least one ADU in the downtown in the last year or so.
Okay.
And those are subject to building setbacks and everything still?
Yes, yes,
So some lots still couldn't fit one?
yes.
It's been there for a little while.
Sorry.
Sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. Go ahead.
So, as the consultant, right, you're the consultant who created this element? On your, my thing has to do with fees. So, you say that based upon the analysis of fee increases, development models in comparison to other cities, the fees do not represent a significant constraint. How'd you come up with that?
So we look at all the different fees that the city charges. We compare that with other cities. We look at, you'll see that there's a couple tables in there where we look at fees as a proportion of development costs, total development costs. And we make an assessment, and we're required to make an assessment based on that information. So we look at what's the percentage of development costs, how's that compare to other cities, how do the fees on a per unit basis compare to other cities.
Okay, so based upon this analysis here of your 1,500 square foot house, the total cost is $382,459, and which does not include developers' profit and overhead, correct?
So which figure
They're
are
on
you
page 302 in the
looking? Okay,
box.
let me go there.
And what page number is that in the
Well,
element?
it's 251, and then 302 in the little shaded box.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
Correct?
right, so we have the permit fees, impact fees, school fees, estimated, construction costs, lot costs, right?
So, well, in fact, developer profit overheads 15% at a minimum, which is probably low, but nonetheless. The median price for this size house in Oroville right now, today, is 350,000, which that's probably gonna go down. So I would say that impact fees have a very big impact on this housing element. Because, just right now, you've got, and you probably don't know, but you have the school impact fee at 408, but it's now 479 as of July 1st, which is a very out of balanced number. So when you have these separate entities raising their fees, it's a de facto moratorium on building, because no builder's gonna come in here and build a single-family dwelling where we need single-family dwelling for, market rate housing. Say, where you also have it here for the hospital, that within a year, we'll discuss with the hospital their needs for their doctors and nurses. Well, that hospital's gonna be finished by the end of the year, and those doctors and nurses they're not gonna live into low-income housing. They're gonna wanna live in market rate housing, basically, or buy a home. But there's not gonna be anything for them to buy, because no one's gonna build it if the fees do not make sense. So is there a way to put in the housing element that fees they just can't arbitrarily they have to be discussed, studied? And I don't necessarily believe that, well, based upon the fee in Orland or in Chico or in Reading, that those are adequate, because what they pay in those cities, I don't care. What I care is about what we pay in our city. Because what we build here is what matters, not what they build there.
Yeah, we do have in the goals section a program regarding fees and review.
And where's that, what number is
Review and
that?
assessment, I'm just looking for it right now. There's a 2.1.3 is an impact review program. The city will periodically survey the development, application, plan, check, and inspection fees, impact fees, and utility connection fees of other cities in the Butte County region to ensure that the city fees are reasonable, related to the cost of services provided.
And Commissioner Rossi, we recently had those development impact fees studied and updated. It was in 2020 that was completed. So we do those every 5 years, I believe. And so those will be reevaluated again in 3 years, especially with the economy the way it is, they will likely change.
Up or down?
Well, it depends on that time where we are and what the evaluation is from the consultant.
Okay, so, all right.
So
I mean, does the commission, is that brought to the planning commission, or does it just go right to council, or is that just done, who does
The
that?
impact fees goes to city council.
They bypass the planning commission?
It does.
Just goes right to city council?
It does.
I see. Okay. So,
But it is a full-scale study of parkland, drainage, roadways, housing, and there's another component I'm forgetting. And so it assesses what our current build-out is and what property is available and what infrastructure is needed to meet those that build out for the city, and then those fees are evaluated based on that.
Okay.
So those fees go back in, so the $12,000 for a home, a portion of it goes to parks, a portion of it goes to roadways, drainage, and schools, things of that
Right,
nature.
but I mean, like you said before, I mean, the roadways in front of my building haven't been paved since 2008. And it's not gonna be done until 2025. So, that's a long time.
Right,
There's a lot of city roads that are bad,
that's correct.
and again, I just.
There's many factors that play into that, though, and why they're not getting done, and it's not, we have the funding, we're having a very difficult time with engineering and contractors and trying to get all of these roadways, because we've had a list of roadways that we've intended on paving, and we have the money to do it, but getting the engineering, our private engineers are so heavily impacted with all the disaster recovery efforts that it is taking months, if not years, to just get the engineering completed, to put it out to bid, to get the roadways repaved. So we have just recycled our roadway list that we intended on paving last year to this upcoming fiscal year because our engineers are so, we have 3 contract engineers to do all of our roadway infrastructure engineering, to put it out for RFP, and they are so busy with other projects that we're having a difficult time getting that engineering back. So it's not that we are sitting on our hands and not allowing these roadways to be repaved. We want them repaved yesterday, but we're waiting. And we're waiting on other consultants to help us.
Again, all right, but I just want to make sure they understand. You know, do these other agencies, like the school board, they just raised theirs to $4.79 a square foot. That's high. Okay? So if I wanted to build a 2,500 square foot house right over here, that school tax is $10,265. I don't have kids in school, okay? So that's a taxation for me without representation. There's a lot of people like that. But I mean, when you look at that price, you know, yeah, in the city of Pleasanton, that number's $7.25 a square foot. But that same 1,500 square foot house is $1.5 million in Pleasanton, not $400,000.
Right.
So it's a much higher percentage. So do these other agencies collaborate with the city about their fees? Because by the time everybody puts their hand out, the fees are so exorbitant that a builder will not come here and build. It doesn't make sense. So the housing element won't really mean a lot when we need 75 or 100 new market rate homes. No one's going to do it. That's the point I'm trying to make.
And we did make a comparison to other jurisdictions within the county and around the county, and our fees fall within the middle of all of them. They're not well above. We're right in line with all the other jurisdictions.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
But where does that get us? Even though we're right in the middle, if we still can't build, we don't build.
Well, can I add something real quick?
Absolutely.
Because the contention here is that it's the cost of building, the cost of construction, and part of that is fees. But the real problem that we're having is the cost of the construction itself, the cost of the materials. That's what's gone up so much recently. Now that's why the schools fees have gone up so much, because the cost of constructing anything new regarding education has gone up so much because of all the different regulations and requirements, cost of materials, everything, right? And that's kind of what we're running into, right?
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be for, added students, but I mean, if you're just an average guy coming to here to build a house, you're 57 years old, and you don't have any children or grandchildren, you're spending $10,000 to give to the school.
And I'm assuming that's something that would be taken up with the school boards, right?
Right.
Well, but they do just say, they have their same reasoning. Well, we had someone analyze the number, and this is where we fall in it. But it's still, Carl, you've been a builder, right? You understand the fees.
Yeah, you pay 'em.
But the pain is
You
spread
pay 'em
evenly
if you
throughout the
can afford to
community.
do it.
And so, and if it's not school fees, it's another fee, and that fee may not apply to, you know, John Doe over here, but it applies to this person. So those fees are always spread evenly throughout the community, whether they apply to all or some.
Right. Understandable.
So the housing element has assessed that our fees are reasonable and not impeding private sector housing development, which is one of the goals of the housing element, is to not impede. Is there some further statement or analysis that we should be putting into the housing element to somehow strengthen that statement? I'm not sure the housing element is a vehicle that can have any
No,
impact on that, but.
I only brought it up because I read it.
Yeah.
In here that they weren't impeding and
And
when the
that's-
median price is X.
As a developer,
And the cost to
you're
build
not
is
quite sure
X.
that's true, yeah.
No builder's gonna do
Yeah.
it. So I don't know if we're defeating our purpose or not. If our goal was to provide housing, as I also read in here, that we have a great shortfall because of the Camp Fire and the Dixie Fire and the Bear Fire and all the other fires, right?
Well, and also the median increase of those homes went up because of those fires as well, because the demand increased.
Right.
So it's going to be a give and take. We're in kind of a strange time right now, and Oroville is kind of in this bubble. And so even though it seems outrageous now, it's bound to level out, especially, I mean, we're making statements when this housing element is going to spread out over 8 years. So the environment can dramatically change in the next 8 years, and we are on the flip side of that.
That would be nice.
So it's a general statement as far as the fees go, but we are within the median for the area.
And you are correct. The 750 units of affordable housing we built recently would not have been built without the 9% tax credits and the other subsidies that they've received, so.
Yeah, it's just, anyway, I just think that the fees are enough that are worth a second look. That's all.
And I think everybody understands that frustration. We need housing. It's not worth it to build. And it's like, what the hell do we do about that? Pardon my French, but, I don't have a solution to that.
I mean, reading the element, and I haven't got through the whole thing, but it says the majority of the homes in Oroville need rehabilitation, which is true. There's a lot of things that we need. New housing would help. Revenue, cities gain their revenue by fees, right? But if you don't collect the fees because no one's willing to pay the fees to do anything, you don't collect the revenue, except for your normal tax base. And so, I mean.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to a conversation that was started with Commissioner Sheard here. She started a conversation about Program 1.2.2 about the low barrier navigation centers by right and area zone for mixed use. The conversation kind of evolved into talking about transitional and supportive housing, which we talked about under 2.141516. And we were talking about what HUD was requiring that we allow, but did we move from, in that conversation, we moved from the low barrier shelters, and I wanted to talk about, what is HUD requiring about the low barrier shelters? Because it sounded from the language, we were talking about HUD requiring for transitional and supportive housing, but what about the requirement for low barrier shelters?
Yeah, I could go back to that. And it's actually the state, it's HCD that's making this requirement. It's a state law that.
State housing, federal housing,
Yeah, I
some
know.
larger governmental entity
Exactly.
telling us what we need to do. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Right, there's so many acronyms. I know, it's confusing. So that is a requirement of the AB 101 state law, that the zoning code is amended to allow the low barrier navigation center. So it's pretty straightforward as we've worded it there. And it would be an issue for certification of the housing element if that was not included.
Yeah, I get that. So, and I absolutely understand the rationale for trying to force cities to get this kind of, these kinds of facilities in, because they get, if not, they get rejected and needs go unmet. So I get that, but, to what extent could we modify the areas that are zoned that would allow that by right? And I'm looking at, what you've indicated here about mixed use and non-residential uses that allow for multifamily development. If we were to take out one of our mixed uses, such as our downtown mixed use, which is the mixed use that would probably be least appropriate for that kind of a development, would that be a problem?
Well, I'll let Wes handle that one. That one, that's really a local zoning decision. I mean, how you handle that going forward. I don't know if that, you want to address that in the housing element, because here we're more of a high-level work plan, policy type of language, and you want to make sure that it's certified. But as far as how it's implemented and the details, I mean, you can
So
address that one.
I guess I have two thoughts about that. One is that we do have 3 different mixed-use districts, a downtown mixed use that covers the downtown area with certain requirements, neighborhood mixed use, which has other requirements, encouraging small business and smaller mixed-use projects, and then the corridor mixed use, which covers all of Oro Dam Boulevard and Olive Highway and quite a bit of distance on both sides of those two. Downtown mixed use, as we implement this in the next 6 months, we could perhaps exclude the MXD district, the downtown mixed-use district, and then enact this permit by right, and then submit it to HCD and see what they come back with. Because there would likely be a lot of discussion about that point.
So the answer that I'm getting then is that that's a downstream discussion.
That's what I would like to punt on that one, yes.
Wes, sorry, this is Connor on Zoom. I've been here the whole time.
We saw you, Connor. Hi, Connor.
So for the downtown mixed use, I think partially just off the top of my head, downtown may be a little bit more insulated, because if HCD is considering this to be residential, mixed use downtown requires residential to be on the 2nd floor of buildings. And any new construction must incorporate commercial on the 1st floor. That increases the cost already for a new development who wants to utilize transitional housing somehow. So that would kind of just automatically weed out in terms of economics of it working out. So that may be working in our favor. And then in addition, there are more form-based code requirements for our downtown district area. So that's not just going to be, a building on a corner that's a prefab metal, however it's going to be. So there's some restrictions in place for our downtown mixed use that may be helpful moving forward. And then possibly the mixed use zoning districts, implementing more of those policies of how mixed use development should look. Having more of those, mix of land uses and horizontal style mixed use, those kinds of things that may decrease some concern that we may be having right now. But again, as Wes said, that's kind of discussions for down the road.
Okay, thank you, Connor. And based on your answer, it sounds like perhaps our historic overlay is also going to kind of play a role in that, and that it would just further discourage the economics of constructing something like this where we want to have visitors. downtown mixed use, okay. Right.
So am I understanding correctly then from what Connor said, that the city can manage these HCD requirements? I guess just the language, like the by right in these areas. So does the city still have the ability to do what they deem is best for our zoning in our local area?
One of the keys to successfully accomplishing this would be to make sure that our standards are objective development standards, and that we're not specifically rejecting a low barrier shelter because we didn't
Right.
like the site, that we had some sort of a blanket policy that legitimately and objectively with supported findings conclude that.
Yeah, I mean, I believe we need them. I believe they're extremely important. I believe they're going to even become more and more important. I just don't want the city to not be involved in the discussion or any of the management of it. That was my main concern. Are we going to lose total control over something that is so important and we absolutely need and is going to grow?
Yeah, and I would just add to that, the city still has their development standards that they can apply, and still has planning review and so on. The by right just means that it doesn't go to that particular use in those particular zones don't go to a discretionary planning commission hearing.
Okay. And my one last comment was, the way I've always taken school fees, because I tend to not like fees either, is that house values are higher where you have good schools. So I don't know if that's just my 2 cents on that. I've always thought when you live near better schools and they're well-funded, that your property values go up.
Well, it has to do with demand. People want to have,
They want to live near
Right.
the best schools.
I mean, I have 5 kids, and I wanted to be close to a good high school, and
Yes.
I mean, I had kids in grade school, junior high, and high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so we worked hard to find a place to live that met our schooling needs. And that has a lot to do with demand, and the prices are a little higher, and
I mean, I hope it's still
I'm
true,
not sure what
but I
that
don't
has to
know.
do with the housing element.
Okay. That's it.
Any other discussion?
Just a thank you for the incredible amount of work that has gone into this so far, and so both staff, consultants, thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Okay. I'm waiting for a motion of some kind.
Probably want to add in. The 4.1, do you have that, Wes?
The two that I have would be the new program 4.1.3, which is the language that James has given us to add collaborating with public health for smoking, and the excluding MXD for low barrier shelters in the program 1.2.2. And that may or may not be advisable to put into this particular program text at this time.
I mean, I think you put it well. It's more of a detail down the road zoning decision. Again, housing element's not really where you're amending the municipal codes.
My takeaway is that's a downstream discussion that we're not including here.
Yeah. I would add to, our recommendation is to also include the amendments to the AFFH sections that are part of that handout.
This one.
Yes, correct, right.
Somehow kept organized. Don't know how. It doesn't look like it, but.
And isn't this one These are going in too, right? This
The,
and this?
the goals chart was just for your
Okay.
use to help navigate that.
'Cause
that-
they're
that
in there
housing
already.
program.
Okay, got it.
The summary of amendments to AFFH sections
Okay.
includes all the amendments that we're recommending for that section.
So any motion should include those changes as well.
I think the highlighted sections just link to the items that he called out in
Oh,
the
okay.
presentation.
So someone with skills needs to make this motion.
I can't, so. You know, we can always help with the language. The staff knows the two items that we want to have added, don't you?
Yep.
Wes? You can make a motion to have Wes include those two, something. He just presented them to us, he
Okay.
just read them to us.
Okay, I'll do it then. I make a motion that we pass the housing element update with the two inclusions
There you go.
that Wes has recorded.
And those two inclusions would be the new program 4.1.3 about smoking and the recommended changes to the AFFH.
Right on.
That
Yes.
is in that handout.
Yes.
Thank you, Wes. I will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Motion carries.
Fantastic, fantastic job by the consultant and staff and
Yeah, sorry, staff, we always have, it's like you're teaching, as you were
Commissioners.
teaching us.
just a really good work job creating I think is a good housing element. That's my personal opinion, but. Okay, where am I at? Reports and discussion, correspondence?
Commissioner reports is next.
Huh?
Commissioner reports.
Yeah. None? Historic Advisory Commission reports? Did we have was there a meeting on the 9th? Or was that canceled because I?
Cancel.
Because I
We
couldn't
canceled
go.
it.
We're waiting till after Danny's wedding.
Right, and so we're gonna have it continued until August, is it?
Yeah, so we could do the first, during the first DRC in August. We'll
What
do
date
it for
in
before
August?
then. Should be the second Thursday.
Second Thursday.
We'll schedule it. We
Yeah.
just, we'll schedule the Zoom or the meeting so that it would be earlier on that day.
It'd be August 11th.
Okay, that's fine. Staff reports.
Yes, we'll keep this short. There are a number of projects and activities going in flux. But the next DRC meeting agenda items on July 14th will be a potential fourplex apartment building, a pre-application, where an applicant is considering building either a 2 or a 3-story apartment building on a certain parcel. A large garage at 293 Table Mountain Boulevard, and an update to the Stream Charter School use permit that this body approved a little over a year ago, which, if you recall, they included an expansion that includes a new gymnasium and 10 classrooms. Now they want to include some, I don't know how many yet, portable buildings also on that same site. So that requires a use permit modification. So that would be coming before the development review and then later the planning commission. So that's all I have. at this time.
Is that it? Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting. Get to hit the gavel, turn off the mic.